Hello, everyone. My name is Dustin Bossart, and I am the superintendent at Cleveland Public Schools. I'm here to talk with you about our operating levy. On November 4th, you'll be asked to vote on a crucial levy for our school district. We are seeking to increase revenue by $750 per pupil with adjustments for inflation for the next 10 years. This isn't just about numbers, it's about the day-to-day operations that keep our school running. The proposed levy would generate an estimated $500,000 per year, which is essential for us to balance our budget and most importantly, ensure that we continue to build future leaders. The district conducted a community survey and the results indicated that the community felt we should request the same amount. To prevent bias, this survey was conducted by an outside group that has vast experience in levies and conducting surveys, with all results and surveys compiled by them. Please see the planning survey and survey results on the district website. The bottom line is that the need has not gone away, and asking for a lesser amount than what is needed would have the district in a similar situation, if not now, then in the near future, and the district would have to come back and ask for another levy. You might hear a lot of terms thrown around when it comes to school finance. So let's clarify the difference between a bond and a levy. An operating levy is a primary way for a school district to increase its revenue. These funds are used for day-to-day operations of the district. A bond, on the other hand, is specifically for building projects. For example, the 2018 building bond could only be used for facility improvements that were listed on that ballot. Here's a simple way to remember it. Bonds are for building, levies are for learning. Now let's watch a quick video for a quick explanation of school funding and issues surrounding it.
After headlines across Minnesota declared record school funding in 2023, you may be asking yourself, why are so many school districts making budget cuts and going to voters for more funding? Here are the top reasons Minnesota schools are struggling to balance budgets. Number 1, inflation. Families aren't the only ones feeling the impact of rising costs. For school districts, the costs of labor, health insurance, property insurance, and school bus transportation continue to rise. The 2023 inflationary increase to the general education formula is a step forward, but it doesn't make up for decades of underfunding and failing to keep up with rising inflationary costs. Number 2, unfunded and underfunded mandates from the state. When it comes to some of the most costly things schools have to pay for, it's the state legislature, not the local school board, who makes these decisions. From implementing new instructional strategies to increasing curricular requirements to providing unemployment benefits, there are decisions made at the state level that local districts must follow. While the state may offer one-time funds to help pay for some new requirements, the ongoing costs are often the school district's responsibility. And number 3, the changing role of schools in our communities. The needs of students are different than they were 10, 20, or 30 plus years ago. From mental health support for students, specialized learning assistance, family resources, and career programs to help meet workforce needs, schools have taken on additional responsibilities to meet the needs of their students and community. When you add rising safety needs, aging buildings and technology, and declining birth rates, it's clear why Minnesota districts struggle to balance their budgets. School funding is complex, with the majority of funding coming through the state in the form of general education aid. Schools also receive funds for specific categories that can only be spent on certain items. Additional needs are then covered by property taxes. In other words, just because the state is providing us with more dollars doesn't mean we can use those dollars wherever we like. Each year, we tackle the challenge of balancing these funding sources with our increasing expenses to build an effective budget that meets student needs. When our student needs exceed state and local funding, we may seek additional support through a referendum. As you can see, there's more to the story beyond headlines of schools receiving record funding, inflation, unfunded mandates, and a changing role for schools. Funding schools is an investment in our students, community, and future. Please reach out to your elected officials and share your story so they can help do their part to make sure our students and our schools are receiving the resources they need for success. Visit our website to learn more.
Last year, the levy was not successful, and as a result, the district was forced to make nearly $475,000 in reductions for the 25-26 school year. These were incredibly difficult decisions, and we want you to understand what they were and the impact. The elimination of 3 teaching positions forced some students into multi-age classrooms and slightly increasing our class sizes. One office staff position was eliminated, which meant those duties were assigned to the remaining staff along with their normal duties. In my first year, we discovered spending was at roughly $170,000 on speech services that could be done in-house with the proper hire. So we brought our speech department in-house, reducing staffing and hiring. We're reducing that cost almost in half. We also realigned custodial departments, combining some duties with the remaining staff members. We had to eliminate or delay the purchase of new curriculum and supplemental materials, switching to online resources. Our agricultural science courses were reduced. The industrial arts program was eliminated. We had to restructure support staff positions and change our co-op agreement with Loyola to a per participant rate. We reduced department, classroom, and district budgets. And finally, busing services were reduced and more cluster stops were created, leading to longer ride times for some students and the complete elimination of busing for others. This has left some families frustrated with their pickup locations. These were tough changes and they had a real impact on students and staff. So, why do we need more funding? What are the reasons? It's a simple question with a complex answer. One item is inflation. Our state funding formula has not kept pace with the rising costs of, well, quite honestly, everything. Our district receives 19% less per student than we did back in 2003. When you factor in all the rising costs from supplies and technology to salaries and utilities, that's a tough gap to close. To put that in perspective, that's a difference of $1,470 per student. And for our district, that would have amounted to approximately $900,000 this year alone. We are simply doing more with less, but the model isn't sustainable. Beyond the issues with our state's general funding formula, there's another significant challenge, and that's the cost of providing mandated special education services. By law, we are required to provide these services for our students. However, the state and federal governments do not fully reimburse us for the costs. This creates a massive hole in our budget that we have to fill with our general fund. This costs the district an additional $500,000 each year, $500,000 that could be used elsewhere. And it gets even more challenging. The state is actually reducing its reimbursement for special ed transportation, cutting it to 95% in the fiscal year 2026 and 90% the following year. You might have also heard about the Blue Ribbon Commission. The commission was created to find $250 million in savings for special education cross subsidy aid by 2028-29. This simply means districts will see even further reductions in special ed funding. This isn't a problem unique to us, it's happening across the state. In addition to these specific cuts, there's a projected $420 million reduction in overall state funding by 2028-29. The challenges don't stop there. We were held harmless for compensatory aid this year by one-time money, which brought in $68,000 for our district. But if the task force doesn't find a solution, we could lose or have that funding significantly reduced. The rising costs of our obligations are another factor. The school district pension adjustment, for example, increased from 2% to 2.3%, adding more pressure to our budget. The state is also making cuts to a variety of smaller but still critical programs. Additional funding we receive for school lunches, which helps us provide meals to our students, is being cut in half, from 12.5 cents to 6.25 cents per meal starting in 2028. There will also be a reduction in library aid funding to our district beginning in the fiscal year 2028. These are just some of the many challenges we face. While each of these cuts or rising costs may seem small on its own, they add up to a significant financial burden. We're not only looking at solving the budget problem now, but anticipating the budget down the road. It's not just about a lack of funding, it's also about the increasing number of responsibilities the state has mandated for us. Think of it this way: the state is giving us more chores to do, but not giving us the tools to do them. All of these mandates cost additional money, and they are not fully funded by the state. Let's look at some of these unfunded mandates. Additional course requirements. New laws have new laws of us to provide new curriculum and programs such as personal finance, career plans, mental health, and literacy instruction. For example, the READ Act requires us to retrain our teachers and purchase new curricula that are aligned with the science of teaching. The one-time money that our district received allowed us to give our staff a stipend of about $800 for training, or roughly $10 or less an hour. In contrast, a neighboring district is giving their staff $4,000 stipends because they receive more money. The state's new paid family medical leave program, which is set to begin in 2026, and changes to unemployment benefits for school districts. The district will be responsible for a portion of those premiums. There have been significant changes to student discipline laws, particularly for younger students. The focus is now on non-exclusionary disciplinary practices and providing alternative educational services before a student can be removed from school. This is a positive step forward for students, but it requires more resources, including additional staff, time, and training to implement efficiently. Mandated teacher training. The state has passed laws mandating new training for our teachers and staff. For example, there are new requirements for paraprofessionals to complete a certain number of hours of paid professional development each year. There are also new training requirements for teachers on everything from updated literacy instruction to using non-exclusionary discipline. For a long time, the district we've had a growing deficit each year, but we've been able to balance the budget. You might be wondering how. The simple answer is we've been using our savings and emergency funds. We've been using a fund balance, which is essentially our savings account. We've been using that money to cover the gap between our revenue and expenses. But as you know, you can't live off your savings forever. This is not sustainable long term or a solution. We were also fortunate to receive ESSER funds, which were COVID-19 relief funding. These funds were designed to help us navigate the financial challenges of the pandemic, and they were a huge help. They allowed us to invest in technology and staffing and keep our school running smoothly during a difficult time. But those funds were one time, and they have now ended. We can no longer count on that money. The final point I want to make today is a big one. It's about where the burden of school funding has shifted. The state has been pushing more and more of the financial responsibility onto local taxpayers while creating more unfunded mandates. Levies used to be for the extras in school. Now we're asking it to cover the basics and to cover the new mandates that went unfunded. We are not isolated in this. The data shows that 72% of Minnesota school districts now rely on a voter approved operating levy to help fund their daily operations. The average amount is $1,147 per student. Since 2017, there have been over 360 operating levy votes, not including the 43 that will take place this year. For some districts, the burden is even greater. In a high property wealth and low population area like ours, taxpayers have to pay a much higher rate to generate the same amount of money for their schools as taxpayers in the districts that have a higher population. It's huge disparity that puts a lot of pressure on local homeowners and businesses. So when you see districts like ours coming to the voters to ask for a referendum, it's not because we want to, it's because we have to. How about open enrollment and how does it affect our budget? You might be asking that question. In fact, many comments were made during our community survey about open enrollment, such as why don't we charge families that open enroll? The simple answer is families are entitled to a free and appropriate public education of their choice. In other words, we can't charge non resident students. Another comment was that we should end open enrollment. Yes, this is an option, but as you will see in the next few slides, open enrollment is crucial for our district's survival. Without it, our curriculum, course offerings would be watered down. The consolidation could become a reality. With consolidation, our residents would have even less of a voice in their child's education. These are all great questions or comments. The reality is that open enrollment is a vital component of our school's financial health. When students choose to attend Cleveland Public Schools, the state aid associated with that enrollment helps the district. This directly increases the amount of money the district gets from the state. Think of it this way: a student is a student. The district receives the same state and federal aid for each student, whether they live here or are open enrolled. Currently, students who open enroll make up 51% of our enrollment. That means they bring 51% of the total state and federal funding. These open enrolled students are essentially filling open and available seats in our classrooms. We have the classroom space and the teachers, and these students allow us to maximize the use of those resources. It's a lot like an airline flight. When the flight isn't full, the airline doesn't make money. When the flight is completely full, the airline makes money. When our school is at full capacity, we are able to be more physically efficient. Without our open enrolled students, our district would have to cut programs, reduce staff, and make even more difficult choices to balance the budget. To make up for that revenue we receive from these students, we would need to ask our taxpayers to support a much higher levy, a much higher number than the one we're proposing today. Open enrollment is not a budget problem, it's a budget solution. To truly understand our position, it's helpful to see how we stack up against other districts in Minnesota. This isn't about shaming anyone, but rather about a sobering look at our financial reality. This table shows the total general fund revenue per student, broken down by source. Look all the way to the right with Cleveland. You'll notice something striking when you look at our numbers compared to others. Our total general fund revenue is $13,121 per student. Now look at the others. Minneapolis and St. Paul are both over 23,000. Truman is over 15,000. And even neighboring schools like St. Peter and Lake Crystal are over 14,000. The fact is, we're operating at a financial disadvantage. Don't our kids deserve to be valued as much as any other student in the state? Take a look at the two largest sources of funding. On the one hand, we have property taxes. Here you can see a wide range of numbers reflecting the different property values and local referendum amounts. And while we do receive some revenue here, it's not enough to close the gap. On the other hand, look at the general education aid. This is the primary funding we receive from the state. You can see that our number at 8,667 is one of the lowest on the list. This isn't a mistake. It's a reflection of the state's funding formula, which simply does not provide us with the resources we need to keep up. Finally, look at the row for ADM served plus tuitioned out. This number includes open enrolled students. These are the total number of students the state uses to determine the number of students schools have. This is a critical line item for us. This is the 33,336 for St. Paul and the 30,236 for Minneapolis, and for us, 636. Times that per pupil, and that's where your funding comes from. The numbers don't lie. They tell a story of a district that is asked to do more with less. This referendum isn't about making us a rich school district. It's about giving us a fighting chance to get closer to the average and provide our students with the same opportunities as their peers in other communities. So what's on the ballot? You're looking at the actual wording for the ballot. We do not make those words. They're written by statute and lawyers, not by the school district. I'll give you a second to read that. I was debating on whether to add the next two slides or not, but I want to be as transparent as possible. The operating referendum allowance comparison. As you look at the graph, you can easily see Cleveland at $512 has one of the lowest voter approved referendum authority per pupil for the upcoming school year. If our ask of $750 per pupil is passed, we will be at $1,262 per pupil, slightly higher than the average in the state, which is $1,147. Of course, with over 40 schools asking for more levies this year, that number will rise. This table indicates total property taxes with similar schools. Cleveland is in the middle of the pack. With the approved $750, we would slide in behind Grenada, Huntley, East Change. This is a table that includes all levies and bonds. What will a levy cost me? This table represents an increase for residential homesteads, apartments, commercial, and industrial property. For example, a home with an estimated market value of $300,000 would cost the homeowner $26 a month and $311 annually. So, what does this levy cover? In essence, the most important thing to know about this levy is the tax form. This levy is not applied to seasonal recreational property like cabins. It's not applied to agricultural land and buildings. Instead, the levy is only applied to the house, the garage, and 1 acre of land on those properties. This means that almost all other properties, your primary homes, and commercial businesses are paying the same tax per dollar of market value. An operating referendum revenue amount can also qualify for state equalization aid. What that means is the state recognizes that some districts have a lower property tax base than others. So depending on our district's market value per resident pupil, the state will provide some aid to help equalize the tax burden, so our taxpayers don't have to carry the entire load. In short, the structure of this levy is designed to be as equitable as possible and to leverage additional state aid. It's the most effective tool we have to generate the necessary revenue to fund our schools. The state of Minnesota has two tax refund programs and one tax deferral program available for owners of a homestead property. The regular property tax refund, the special property tax refund, and the senior citizens property tax deferral program. Please talk to your tax preparer or your financial advisor for more information. This slide is similar to the previous one, just in a boxed look. What happens if the referendum doesn't pass? There comes a point where hope and optimism must give way to hard look at reality. We have talked about the challenges we face and the reasons we need more funding. Now we must confront the sobering question, what happens if the referendum doesn't pass? The answer is simple, but the consequences are profound. If we do not secure the funding from this levy, the district will be forced to make additional and frankly devastating reductions to our budget. The district has already identified the following potential budget reductions. These are not idle threats, they are painful choices. They're not also meaning everything on the list will be reduced, or there might be other items added to the list. We would have to reduce our bus services. This would mean looking at no preschool transportation, forcing parents to find a way to get their little ones to and from school, or over the noon transition. We would have fewer drop-off pickup locations for some students. This could mean a difficult commute. We would also be forced to eliminate transportation for our co-op teams to get to practice. I don't want to send co-op or athletes in a vehicle on their own, but that might be something we have to do. The preschool program could be reduced or eliminated entirely. The program is the first step in the child's educational journey, a crucial foundation for their future success. Take that away would be a loss that will impact our community for years to come. Unfortunately, this program is not self-supporting, and we only receive $15,000 from the state to support their through scholarships. Co-op athletic teams with neighboring schools could be reduced or eliminated. We would be forced to reduce non-academic support staff. And perhaps most difficult of all, we would have to eliminate student support services, potentially a school counselor and some paraprofessionals. Additional reductions will need to be made, which could be reducing field trips. For many students, a field trip is their first and only opportunity to see how what they learn in the classroom connects to the real world. To take that away would be to diminish the richness of their education. We may also have to eliminate participation in FFA events for our high school students. For many of these young people, FFA is more than a club. It's a path to a career, a source to a scholarship, a deep connection to the agricultural community. Perhaps one of the most heartbreaking cuts would be the elimination of electives. Programs like art, elementary music, family consumer science, agricultural science, band, and Spanish are not just fillers for a schedule. They are what allow students to discover their passions, to develop their creativity, to find their place in the school community. To eliminate them would be to tell our children we can only afford to teach them the basics and nothing more. The impact would be felt not just in the classroom, but throughout the community. We may have to eliminate beloved family and community events like Parade of Trees, Breakfast with Santa, Trunk or Treat, and Easter egg hunt. Finally, we would have to seriously consider a 4-day school week. This is not a decision any of us would want to make. It would create significant burden on our parents who would need to find childcare, and it would put our students at a disadvantage compared to our peers in other districts. This is the last resort, a sign that we have exhausted every option. These are the cuts that will follow a failed referendum. They will not be easy. They will not be without consequence. The choice before us on November 4th is not just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It is about the future of our students and the soul of our community. Absentee voting in person and election day voting. Thank you and have a great day.